Welcome back to Kings of Columbus. We're going to make predictions, Landis. We have over-unders. We have who will lead Ohio State in various categories, and we will give the people our official predictions for this Ohio State season, how the team will perform, how far they will go. It's Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis on Kings of Columbus, and we have launched Kings of the North live noon to 1:30, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 30, post-game show Saturday at 11 p.m. We are in that world. But Kings of Columbus isn't going anywhere, right?
No. That was never part of the plan. Kings of Columbus remains. I actually, as we record this on Wednesday morning, I still don't know what we're going to do on the weekends. Like I think it's probably worth telling people we're not going to have the post game show like we had it last year on Saturdays, because I just don't think it's going to work with what we're doing with KOTN. We'll probably talk about Ohio State on most of the live KOTN Saturday night shows, so it's not like we're going to ignore Ohio State's game, but I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do, if anything, on the weekends to kind of like replace that. I'm kind of mulling around a Sunday thing, or maybe we can people involved with the tech subscriptions on a Monday show or something like that, but we're not going to have the Saturday live post-game show as we had it every week last year, but we'll be live on KOTN, and when Ohio State's playing a major game, we will definitely be talking about that on that live show.
Should we ask people if they would want to listen to something on a Sunday? If something could be dropped on Sunday before Monday, like would people be interested in that? Wait until Monday till you guys come back on the daily. Like we can take suggestions from our audience here. It's just like we have a lot going on.
We do have a lot going on. No, I would welcome that feedback. We don't want to. At least I don't want to, and I think I can speak for you in this. I don't want to like eliminate entirely the dynamic of having our texters kind of be like a weekend sounding board after a game, right? So,
correct,
just not happening live immediately on a Saturday. But I also kind of like the idea of giving everyone a little bit of time to breathe, to enjoy the rest of a Saturday, and then come back on Sunday. So I think that's where I'm at with wanting to do something. But I would love feedback on, one, do you like that idea? Two, do you prefer like a Sunday morning before the NFL games, or do you prefer like a Sunday evening when you're kind of winding down on your weekend kind of deal? Because I could see that going either way. Because we're also going to Austin Ward does the show with Zach Bourne on Sundays as well. That's not going anywhere. So this would be like an additional Sunday piece that we do on the podcast. So I think that's what I'd like to do. But yeah, I would welcome any feedback or suggestions on like when people might prefer to watch something like that.
Yeah, let's talk that out. Let's talk that out. If you have ideas, you can drop them in the YouTube comments. You could, if you're a tech subscriber, 614-662-4509, send suggestions there. And again, our KOTN 11 p.m. late night with a K, medieval, stabbing people. Who gets the sword? Hey, we're back on late night with KOTN. Who gets the sword? Kirby Smart. When Ohio State plays a huge game, Ohio State's going to be all over that show. When Ohio State plays a MAC team and Michigan plays Texas, or Penn State plays West Virginia, or Wisconsin plays Alabama, then Ohio State's not going to be in that show as much. But also, if even the diehard Ohio State fans, you want us and we want you, we want to be together when it matters the most. So we will be. Penn State, Ohio State, we're gonna talk like crazy about that. Ohio State, Iowa, we're gonna talk like crazy. So like we'll be there when it matters most. It's just, what do we do after Marshall or Purdue with Ohio State that we're working out here, right?
Yeah. Yes, Ohio State is a major piece of KOTN. Like the show doesn't exist without Ohio State. So we will definitely be talking about Ohio State when it plays those, and it has a few of them, right? Like 4 or 5 games this year where we're going to be kind of headlining the weekend. So yeah,
capital of Northern football.
That's right.
We're in the capital city, right? Like we're in the capital city. We're the people with like the weird faces who look like animals, and then everybody else is in our territory, and we make them fight to the death.
Yeah,
whatever,
That's right.
Let's do Ohio State leaders. We asked our tech subscribers. We got great response on this. Again, if you want to be part of this, this is the time of the year where we point out the tech subscriptions a little more often. 614-662-4509. 2-week free trial, $6 a month. We interact with you. Landis pumps out great like in the moment, hey, this is what Ryan Day just said at his news conference kind of stuff. If you're at work or you're busy and you can't watch the Ryan Day news conference, but you want instantaneous information, it pops right in your phone. Same thing with interviews on Wednesday night. And then just other stuff that we're talking about during the week. It's a good time to do it. I asked the tech subscribers a bunch of questions. The first one, we're doing stat leaders first. Who will lead Ohio State in things. Then we're going to do over-unders. I gave specific yardage totals for a couple different things. Then we'll make our predictions at the end. Who will lead Ohio State in rushing, Landis? I only gave him two options. Quinshon Judkins or TreVeyon Henderson. Who do you say?
I say Quinshon Judkins, but I'm interested in the percentage breakdown of this answer because I know that there are a lot of folks who really like TreVeyon Henderson for good reason.
What's your, like, is it a no-brainer to you, though? No doubt about it.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
73% Quinshon, 27% TreVeyon for this answer. So I do have this from our guy Howard in Charlotte. I felt the need to mention that I have TreVeyon having more rushing yards than Quinshon this year, only because I think with an improved run scheme and offensive line, I think that the long runs for Trey will drastically increase his total rushing yards. So that if Quinshon's more the workhorse and TreVeyon, maybe Quinshon more carries, TreVeyon more yards, that's a version of that is possible. But I guess it depends how close you think the carries will be. For instance, 2018, J.K. Dobbins, 230 carries, Mike Weber, 172. 2016, when JT Barrett was basically a running back, JT Barrett, 205 carries, Mike Weber, 182. Like, there's 230 to 170 in total carries, like sound about like that kind of split, or do you think it could lean even more towards Quinshon? And by the way, I also will take Quinshon to lead him in rushing yards.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because, Quinshon Judkins was up around like 250, I think, per year at Ole Miss. And part of the reason why he came to Ohio State was, I think, to not carry the ball quite that much, to kind of share that load a little more evenly. But I really do just think in short yardage, goal line, like low red zone kind of stuff, like Quinshon is the guy they're going to call upon. And that carry total is going to get up there. Still pretty good. Maybe not quite 250, but yeah, like 230, 180 kind of thing. I could see that. And that's, if they're playing 16 games or whatever, 17 games, it's higher than that, I think. But I think Quinshon will get more carries. I think TreVeyon will have a better yards per carry number than Quinshon Judkins. I do agree with TreVeyon probably having a little more opportunity to hit some home runs in this offense, but I think just kind of sheer workload, total yardage, Quinshon Judkins will have more.
So, by the way, just as a point of information, when I asked the texters this, I said in a 12-game regular season. So when we get into the over-unders and specific yardage total, it drives me a little bit nuts about the NCAA. It's just like they don't know what this is why, again, the Heisman is the regular season. Like we're smushing everything together still, even as we get a more definitive and longer postseason, we're still smushing everything together. So in the NFL, when you're doing stuff like this, you're talking about a 17-game regular season and the postseason is separate. In college football, that's not the case. It's all one thing, for better and for worse. So this question is who leads them in rushing, right? I think that applies no matter what. But when we get to the over-unders, to say, I think someone's going to run for 1,000 yards, that could be in a 12-game season. It could be in a 17-game season. So when you're doing that, it makes it's 12 games when we get to the stuff, right? So, and then we'll look back. And then it's hard to look back because it's totals in previous years. It's not regular season totals. So anyway, just so people know that's the only way to do it though, isn't it? To say regular season 12 games. Because Ohio State could play between 13 and 17 games this year.
Right. And how could you, you can, if every prediction say, I think they're going to play 17 games and then this, but who wants to do that? Yeah.
And rushing yards per game. I think he's going to run for 81.3 and someone else is going to run for 68.7. It's like, I don't want to do decimals. This is not a decimal show. Everyone knows that. Yeah. I really like Doug and Bill, but do not bring decimals to that show or they will light you up. Who will lead Ohio State in receiving yards? Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith. Anybody else that I should have thrown in there? Those are the only three names that I threw out. Did I miss anybody? I did give an other option, and 2 of the voters said Brandon Inniss. So Brandon Inniss, at least they threw him in there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to. I do think Ryan Day, when talking about the top receivers, does seem to talk about it as a group of 4 that includes Brandon Inniss, rather than the 3 and then a gap. So I think it's fine to include Brandon Inniss in the conversation, and certainly as a slot receiver, like closer to the ball, maybe he stands a chance if you think about kind of what KJ Hill and Paris Campbell were able to do together. But I don't know that like Emeka Egbuka and Brandon Inniss are going to be on the field at the same time, kind of in the same way that KJ Hill and Paris Campbell were, at least not as often as those guys were. So my pick is Emeka because of how much he'll move around the formation, but he'll be in the slot quite a bit. And I think Will Howard, who had to throw the ball over the middle of the field a decent amount at Kansas State because he was often targeting his tight end, I think we'll often find Emeka Egbuka. So he's my pick. I don't think you could pick anyone other than the 3 that you gave.
Okay. 85% by the texters, Emeka Egbuka. Tie, no, it's not a tie. 8% Carnell Tate, 6% Jeremiah Smith, 1% Brandon Inniss as the other vote. So we have some Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka over-unders that I want to talk about later. Number 3, who will lead Ohio State in sacks? The options that I gave: Mitchell Melton, CJ Hicks, Tyleik Williams, JT Tuimoloau, and Jack Sawyer. Who's your pick?
My pick is actually Mitchell Melton because I gave this out on the bowl predictions show for the season we did last week on the podcast daily. So I'll stick with that. But I don't imagine that I maybe convinced many people that Mitchell Melton was going to be the leader, but he's my pick.
I know you wrote a story about him, right? Like why
yeah.
Is it like third down rush package? He plays 250 snaps while Jack and JT play 600, but still Mitchell Melton leads them in sacks. Is that how the prediction gets there?
Yeah, I don't think it's a particularly high number. I think the leading sack total is less than 10. I think it is like a specialized third down Mitchell Melton. I don't even know if it's 250 snaps. He's just like a really crafty pass rusher. And it's an incredibly small sample size, but if you look at last year when he was out there, and granted it was probably most often against some backups, he had some decent pass rush production in terms of like pressures and pass rush win rate kind of stuff. So if you extrapolate that, I don't know, you can talk yourself into it. I've talked myself into it, but it's more about me thinking that the guy who leads this team in sacks isn't going to have like 13 sacks. I think he's going to have like 7 or 8, and I think Mitchell Melton can get there.
Are sacks dead?
It feels like they're on their way out. Yeah.
I
know. I think it was The Athletic maybe a year or two ago did a story about how down sack production is across the sport, and certainly it's been down at Ohio State the last couple of years. So I think it's probably less about sacks and more just about pressure affecting quarterbacks. So yeah, I don't know that I declare it dead necessarily, but I think it's probably a little less important than it used to be.
I think it's almost dead more for good defenses. Like the better your defense is, the more teams are just going to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands. If you are a one-man show for a mediocre defense, then teams think, we'll double that guy. It's fine. We can hold on to the ball and try to take some shots down the field. And then that guy, 3 times a game breaks loose and has 1.5 sacks per game. I think that's the way to get double-digit sack totals. I just don't know. I don't think Chase Young would have 16 sacks anymore because people would say, we are getting the ball out in half a second. It doesn't matter how good he is because you can negate. I mean, it doesn't negate because it still affects what you want to do. Hey, Ohio State, Chase Young played Oregon and Dylan Gabriel didn't throw a pass more than 10 yards down the field because they didn't want to hold the ball at all. So it has an effect, but you don't let the guy make a big play. I just think that feels like where we are. And for instance, maybe the current Ohio State sack records will never be broken because the sport has changed.
I actually am on board with that idea. I don't think they'll ever be broken. I'm looking now. So Chase Young had 16.5 to lead the country in 2019, and that was having missed 2 games, so he probably would have been pushing 20.
That guy was good.
He was good. So the leader, Will Anderson, in 2021 had 17.5. So that was like the last kind of like super prolific season we've seen. The leader in the country in 2022 had 13.5. Last year, a guy from Troy had 16. In the Power 5 last year, the leader was Latu at UCLA, who had 13.
How Chase Young and Will Anderson killed the sack. Their dominance changed offenses, and they said, we're not letting it happen anymore. Can you get to work on that one?
Sure. Yeah, I got time.
He's Bill Landis. 1 wife, 1 kid, 2 jobs. I'd be like, that's a good sitcom thing. A Philly guy.
I'd watch that show. Yeah.
A Philly guy moves to the Midwest and has 2 jobs, covering a team and covering a region. And like, hey, they got to balance. Like, hey, the kid can't go to daycare today. What's Bill gonna do? Let's watch a 22-minute episode and find out. There'd be a lot of you holding your son on your lap while you podcast.
Yeah. We will have an episode of either this show or Kings of the North this year, where that kid is front and center on camera.
My family thinks that I don't have a job. They know what I do. They just don't consider it to be a job because they don't think it adds value to society, and it's hard to argue.
Right.
My daughter called it, we were discussing like white collar versus blue collar job the other day, and she called this a no collar job, which I thought that is a great explanation of you could wake up, roll out of bed in a t-shirt, and literally anyone could do this. What is the classification of no collar job? You barely have to get dressed, and literally anyone could do it. So I think we've hit on something there.
I like it. Like I'm not wearing shoes currently. Like I can do my job in my socks.
What's dad do? It's not really a job. Okay, let's talk about, now we're going to get to some over-unders. I also think Jack Sawyer, by the way. I think Jack Sawyer.
You didn't say who was it? The Texas leader was Jack Sawyer?
Overwhelming. 77% Jack Sawyer, 8% JT, 6% Tyleek, 5% Mitchell, 4% CJ Hicks.
Okay.
So like scattered support, beyond Jack, but 3/4 for Jack Sawyer. I'd say like 7.5, maybe something like that. Just like even like a game. It's one of those things like right the year that Tommy Togiai led Ohio State in sacks in the COVID year, and he had them all in one game.
Oh, like, right. Yeah.
You just go crazy in a game, and like that's enough. And then you sprinkle a couple in, third quarter. Team's desperate. The starters are still in. The quarterback holds the ball because he's trying to make a play on 3rd and 12. Jack gets to him. I think that makes the most sense. Let's talk
he's led
about
the team in sacks the last 2 years. So,
but like with 5,
right? Like 4. I think it was like 4.5 and 6 or something. Yeah,
it's almost like vacant. That if your sack leader is like, we had 6 guys between 5 and 2.5. It's like, did you really have a sack leader? And that's the thing about it is, I at times I don't know if frustrated is the right word, but I thought they need to get home. They need to get home. They need to get home. And I think I might just give up on getting home. Affect the quarterback, force an offense to get rid of the ball faster than they want to. Let your corners cover. Your pass rush helps your coverage, but you're not getting home. And maybe that's okay because they're so worried about you getting there. They get rid of the ball. I think maybe I've moved on from being of like wanting more sack production. I think I'm just okay.
Yeah, I think I've moved on from like the raw number of how many sacks do you have, but I do think they did not do a good enough job last year of affecting quarterbacks, just sort of generally. Okay. Jack turned it on toward the end of the year for sure, but there were times like every game where you just wonder like, man, this quarterback has a lot of time to throw the ball, and it's fine because their secondary is very good, but I think you want to see them make quarterbacks a little more uncomfortable, even if they're not hitting them.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about over-unders, but I want to try to establish what we think the offensive philosophy is going to be. And this is, I hate decimals, but I'll do a little bit of multiplication.
Okay.
This is trying to figure out 2 things. The number of plays they'll run per game, which matters for stats, and then what their run-pass breakdown will be. So last year, new clock rules. They don't stop the clock when you, on first downs or whatever, when you go out. Like, it's just the clock's running constantly. It's constantly running. And it was the number one thing everybody talked about for the first month of the season last year. And it's like, why talk about football when we can talk about clocks? Oh, love this. Love. Laws, clocks, decimals. It's the best part of football. Ohio State last year wound up running 63.8 plays per game. That was slightly down from the year before when they ran 67.4. Let me go back to 2016. I like to use 2016 as a dividing line because 2016 is the last year without Ryan Day. 2017 is the first year with Ryan Day as the offensive coordinator. Plays per game: 76.3, 73.5, 80.8 plays per game in 2018 when they were throwing the ball a ton. And like going like with Dwayne, and they were attacking through the air. 76.3, 71.3, 70.5, 67.4, 63.8. So it has been a steady decline for a variety of reasons. One is they started to run the ball more after Dwayne left. And the other is like the clock thing. They're down 17 plays per game from 2018. So if you're waiting for someone to put up the stats that Dwayne Haskins and the Ohio State offense did in 2018, again, will probably never happen again, because I'm not sure they're ever going to get back to 81 plays per game, Landis, unless they change the clock rules again, which as they expand the season and they ask more of players and they're having them play more games, I think you have to have them play fewer plays within the game. So we are never getting back to 81 plays a game. So there's some records that may never be broken when it comes to raw stats like that.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever get back to quite that number, but I think there's probably a Chip Kelly effect here that's worth talking about in terms of like pace of play, number of plays.
So you think, if it's 63.8 last year, you think they will run more plays per game this year? Because I was going to say maybe even fewer if they run the ball more and the clock just keeps ticking even more.
I think that's sound logic unless the pace of play is dramatically increased.
Talk pace.
So last year, I thought last year was the slowest Ohio State had been under Ryan Day. It wasn't. It was the second slowest.
Okay.
They were 82nd in the country in pace of play, which is like seconds between plays. 26.9 seconds last year, 27 seconds the year before that, which was 96th in the country.
Where'd you look that up, by the way? Where'd you look that up?
It's like CFB or something. I can't remember.
That's a good stat.
Yeah.
Is there somebody with a stopwatch doing that stuff? Click.
I think no. You just divide time of possession by total plays.
Oh, simple math.
Yeah.
It's not click 27.1. Let me write that down. Okay, that's better.
So Ohio State, I think, was pretty slow for even in 2022 for an offense that like has a reputation of being explosive and one of the best in the country. I think that's slow paced. I think Chip Kelly is probably not quite as fast as he was at Oregon. I have not gone back and looked that up, but UCLA was 13th in the country last year in pace of play, every 23.1 seconds, like 3 seconds faster than Ohio State. They were also 13th in 2022 at 22.5 seconds. So almost 5 seconds faster than Ohio State 2 years ago. And then just sheer number of plays, UCLA ran 106 more plays than Ohio State did last year. It was 937 plays for UCLA, 831 plays for Ohio State in the same number of games.
So you think in the end, so give me a number. If Ohio State averaged 63.8 plays per game last year, give me a number of what you think they'll average this year. You think it will be higher, slightly higher, much higher?
71.
Oh, that's a jump. That would get us back to 2020 range, 71.3 in 2020. Okay. Then my over-unders are all way off, just so everybody knows. Landis predicts, because you're 71. I was operating under the assumption that I think that if they run it even more and you take out some incompletions, I thought they could go even lower. I was operating like, what if they run 62 plays per game? So, okay. That's one part of this equation. The second part of the equation is run pass difference. Now, this is just raw numbers, so this counts quarterback runs as runs. I'm not doing dropbacks versus called run plays. It's simplistic. I understand that. This is not inside the numbers. This is outside the numbers. This is, again, literally anyone could do this. Starting in 2016, Again, okay? Percent of Ohio State plays that were passes. This is the pass percentage, okay? 2016, 41% pass plays. So it's 59 run, 41 pass, right? That's a pretty big lane to the run. 41% pass. The next year, 43% pass. 2018, it's 50-50. 2019, 38% pass. 2020, 39% pass. This is having a quarterback like Justin Fields that's involved in the run game. This is having J.K. Dobbins in 2019, who is a workhorse back. Again, I don't know that people would realize that. You think Justin Fields, man, this guy could throw the ball. They were more than 60% run.
They were they ran the ball more than any Power 5 team in the country that year. I think the only teams that ran it more were service academies.
Okay. Completely switched. They go from 39% run in 2020 to 39% pass in 2020 to 54% pass with CJ Stroud in 2021. I loved it. Then they dial it back. We're way out over our skis. All my over-unders and predictions on CJ Stroud for 2022 were dead wrong because they pulled back. They went to 47% pass in 2022. Last year, they were at 48% pass. So again, if you want to just like go inside the numbers a little bit, the idea that with Kyle McCord, they threw the ball more than they threw the ball with CJ Stroud the year before is like, okay, this is not that, right? Yeah. You can't, like Kyle McCord threw the ball significantly more than Justin Fields threw. Like you were just like the mix was off, right? Mm-hmm. Every now and then, like one time I went in and I got some wings, the mix was off. I got my sauce. It just tasted like pure vinegar. I'm sure they put the same stuff in that they did every time, but the mix was off and I couldn't eat it. Vinegar wings last year. Vinegar wings.
One time I accidentally ordered, we ordered wings one time and they accidentally brought us out ghost pepper wings and we ate like 4 of them before we realized what they were. That was not a fun time.
That show they have where the people eat the hot wings.
Uh-huh.
Don't you think there should be a companion show called 2 Hours Later and have a conversation?
Yeah.
It's not about wings going in.
Yeah.
Like this is hot, but I can handle it. That's our show.
Yeah.
Welcome back to 2 Hours Later with Doug and Bill. That's real talk.
Yeah.
I think they'll be 60-40. I think this is a 60% run team, 40% pass team, which would be reverting back to the Justin Fields breakdown. That's the last time they were this. They would have been that much towards run. Does that sound right to you or does that sound crazy?
No, it does. I would probably say like 55-45 run. So that's what I was going to say. So I'm kind of there with you. It's hard. The thing that makes it difficult is not yet knowing kind of what they're going to ask Will Howard to do passing wise and maybe some of the progress he's made, maybe with the ability to throw the ball down the field a little more. But even if he is significantly better, and I think he will be better than what he showed at Kansas State, I still think they're going to run the ball more than they throw it. So I think anywhere between 55 and 60% run is probably going to be right.
Okay. I'm surprised that you're not more towards 60-40 because like 55-45 is still in the range of a pretty good mix. You know, that's only a 3% difference than last year with 2 backs to feed and a quarterback who we think will be involved in the run game and Chip and his run game variety. And again, I am operating under the theory of maybe throw it in the first half and then just mow people down with the run game in the second half. I'm a little surprised you're not more run.
You get the 60% of anything. You're talking about, I think, being out of balance in a way that would start to worry me a little bit, unless you were like a triple option team or an air raid team. And Ohio State wants to like kind of live in both worlds. So I do think they will strive for more balance than anything approaching north of like a 60-40 split. I think they will. I think they want to be as close to 50-50 as possible. Okay. Obviously, I think Ryan Day has shown that. But you have leans either way, depending on the year and depending on the makeup of your team. So I think the lean will be toward running the ball. I don't think it'll get north of 60%. I'd be surprised if we're talking north of 60% run. But if it's 60-40, I don't think I'd be surprised by that. I think you're right.
I hate balance because in 2022, I wanted them to be 70-30 pass. I was like, why aren't they Washington? Why aren't they Washington? And now I want them to be Navy. So, and it's the same offense. Because if you went from 30% run to 60% run in 2 years, I'm asking a lot. Okay, I get it.
I'm looking
but
up...
this affects over-unders, though, right? Because to me, it's like, okay, well, I can think that Ohio State will throw the ball effectively, but if they're only throwing it 40% of the time and they're only running 62 plays per game, that is not a very heavy pass game. And then I started doing math on this, and I got to some of my over-under numbers, and I was like, is Will Howard going to have like 1,500 passing yards? So then I had to, again, sort of check myself a little bit. But are you ready to get into our actual over-unders now?
I am. Let me just throw this one last number at you. In 2022, when UCLA had the best offense that Chip had there and one of the best rushing offenses in the country, they were 57% run.
Okay.
So even then, when like they were very much hanging their hat on the way they run the ball, they didn't get north of 60%.
That's a good stat. All right. You've talked me down to 57%. I'm still going to say 60 because I have to suffer with my bad prediction. But 57% sounds good. Over under passing yards for Will Howard in the 12-game regular season. He had 2,643 last year at Kansas State. Kyle McCord had 3,170 last year for Ohio State. I set this at 2,900. 2,900 passing yards in a 12-game regular season. When I mathematized myself initially on stuff, I literally got 1,900 passing yards for Will Howard. I was like, what am I doing? But I am way under 2,900. I am way under. I am way under. Because like my initial math idea is like 800 yards under. So it's like, oh, I'll creep up. But I'm not going to creep up to 29.
So you think he's going to average like 200 passing yards a game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm higher than that. I think your number's a good one.
17. I don't know.
Yeah, you're basically asking, can he average 250? That gets you to 3,000 in a 12-game season. Okay.
So this is this is like 245.
Yeah. I am taking the over on 2,900. I think he will be around a 3,000-yard passer. I think maybe a little north of 3,000 yards. Kyle McCord did it, but as you laid out earlier, there was more volume there maybe than Will Howard will get. But I think Will Howard will be more efficient, even if he doesn't have the same volume, which can get him around the Kyle McCord area. And I was also looking at what JT Barrett did in his first year with Ryan Day in 2017. He threw for 2,728 yards that year, but he had the Michigan game where he only had 30 because he got hurt and had to leave the game early. Yeah. And he had like 3 games where he had fewer than 200 passing yards.
Okay.
I don't see a lot of games where Ohio State's going to have fewer than 200 passing yards. So if JT was like flirting around 2,800 with a game where he practically didn't play at all, I think Will Howard will get north of 29. I think he's going to be around like 3,100 over 12 games.
Over 12 games. Okay.
Yeah.
87% over 2,900 for the Texters. 87% over, 13% under. So the Texters are riding with you. Will Howard over. Now we get into the receivers. This is where, again, like, maybe I'll sit this out. My math might be so wrong. It's like once you have the beginning of the math problem wrong, I'm just going to get every answer incorrect now because my initial equation is off. 850 receiving yards for Jeremiah Smith. I like this number. And the reason that I can tell that it was a good number is because it was a fairly even split from the Texters. 12-game regular season. I think we've even talked about 850. But I think we might have been talking about 850 like overall, maybe not in a 12-game season. Are you over or under 850?
I think I'm slightly under 850 on a 12-game season. I think Jeremiah will be a 1,000-yard receiver in the totality of the year, but I don't think he's going to get there in 12 games.
Okay.
So I'm under slightly. Yeah.
And this is also one of those, like, I'm also here for them grinding people down during a 12-game regular season and then getting indoors and in beautiful weather in the playoff and chucking the ball around like a bunch of maniacs.
Sure. Yep.
And being like a different team. Like, I think like because that would be part of Now we're back in a toughness conversation, which is my least favorite Ohio State conversation. But we've talked about you may have to be one thing to get through the Big Ten and a different thing to get out into the world. And we talked about it a lot with Michigan. Michigan has always been more to get through. The last 3 years, Michigan was the get through the Big Ten team, but could they be the national team where maybe you have to open it up a little bit? Ohio State's always been the national team. We can open it up. They haven't been able to get through the Big Ten. I think maybe it's like Two-Face, right? That guy. Is that Tom Holland? Who's the guy who has two faces? Is it Tom Holland in the Spider-Man movies? Green Goblin? I don't know.
Two-Face is as a Batman character. I believe he was played by Aaron Eckhart in the Dark Knight film.
Two faces for this offense. Hey, Ryan, you think you guys could be like Aaron Eckhart this year? 12 games, over 250, over 850 for Jeremiah Smith, 54% over, 46% under. So pretty divided, but you and I are both under. I'm minorly significantly under. Again, like maybe I might be at Jeremiah Smith at 600 yards in a 12-game regular season and 600 yards in a 4-game postseason.
That's kind of where I am. Yeah. I think he might have, I think he will clear 1,000 yards comfortably by the end of the year. But might have to like double up his production in the postseason.
We'll just be saying, can you believe Jeremiah Smith had 31 receiving yards against Purdue, and then he had 186 against Georgia? It's I can believe it. It's called progress.
That's right.
It's called two faces. Emeka Egbuka, this is related to like who you think is going to lead them in receiving. And again, everybody kind of came around on Emeka doing that. I set this at 1,100 for Emeka. He had 1,039 when he was healthy in 2022. That was as a number, like not the main guy in that offense, right? So this is him, presuming he's the main guy, 1,100. Are you over or under for a 12-game season?
I'm over. He's the main guy. I think Will Howard's going to target him a lot. And I also think he will add to this total with like some pop pass jet sweeps that are technically runs, but count toward passing production. So I'm over here for Emeka.
Texters are 69% over, 31% under. I actually will also, despite all my bad math, I'll go over here with Will Howard as a veteran, just leaning on a veteran, and Ohio State slot production, which they have a history of slot production. So I think veteran guy in the slot is a good stat compiler. And by the way, there may be actual over unders on these guys. I don't know what they are because they're illegal in Ohio. So
right.
You cannot make college football player prop bets on anybody in Ohio. So that means when you have your phone and the location services, you have to have it on. You can't even look at them. And then I was trying to look on the internet and be like, pretend I'm in a different state. And I didn't find them. So if these over-unders are off, I apologize, but blame the Ohio House of Commons or whatever it's called. It's not my fault. Parliament. Ohio Parliament. Over under for rushing yards for Quinshon Judkins, 12-game regular season. He had 1,158. Again, this is total yards for the whole year. In 2023, he was a 1,500-yard rusher as a freshman at Ole Miss in 2022. Over under 1,150 is what I set it at. 1,150. So it's like right at where he was last year for the whole season. Are you over or under 1,150?
I am over. That is, I think if my math is right, 95 rushing yards per game. I think he's a 100-yard per game rusher, so I'll go over.
You're slightly over.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm over all the rushing stuff, and maybe even though I just want like I'm going to lean over on the rushing and lean under on the receiving. This was another good number by me. 51% over 1,150 for QJ, 49% under. So split pretty well by the texters. Trevion Henderson, I did a little differently. I did yards from scrimmage for him.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a more interesting conversation. We love the idea. Again, it's been more of an idea than a reality in terms of Trevion as a pass catcher. This also, to me, maybe brings down a little bit of the receiver yardage if they use Trevion catching passes out of the backfield. Over under rushing and receiving yards combined for TreVeyon Henderson in a 12-game regular season. Overall, he was over 1,500 as a freshman in 2021. And last year, he was 1,155. I set it at 1,250. So again, Judkins was 1,150 just rushing yards. TreVeyon is 1,250 yards from scrimmage. Are you over or under?
I'm under, but I don't feel great about it. Just thinking more about last year, because he was pretty close to this number last year, and he missed 4 games last year. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not super confident that he's going to be 1,000-yard rusher in 12 games. Like I don't know. I think by the end of the year, Ohio State will have 2,000-yard rushers, but I don't know that TreVeyon's going to get there in 12 games. So I'm envisioning like 800 rushing, 400 receiving, and that receiving might be high. So I'm under, but I probably feel the worst about that pick of all the ones I've made so far.
Yeah, I was going to say 850 and 400, which gets you right to my number. So I am going to go over on this, and the texters were 58% over, 42% under. So we are split on that. These are team over-unders. How many points per game will Ohio State average in the regular season? Last year, they scored 30.5 points per game, which is like unbelievable. That is not a lot of points for Ohio State. 30.5. They were at 44.2 in 2022. So they dropped 2 touchdowns per game from CJ Stroud to Kyle McCord. I set it at 40 points. So it's not you're not asking for CJ, but it's a 10-point jump from a year ago. Are you over or under 40?
I'm over. I think this looks like an Ohio State offense that's putting up more than 40 points a game. I don't know. It's not a 50-point per game offense for me, like the elite of the elite, but I think they are somewhat comfortably over 40.
And I think, again, with maybe plays down and maybe grinding it out and not pedal to the metal in the second half, I am over by 0.6. Like they'll average 40.6 points per game or something like that. The texters are pretty well over, 71% over, 29% under. So over 40 for the offense.
Do you think that they might be more willing to keep the pedal down late in games, but they're talking so much about like playing depth and getting guys experience that maybe garbage time could look a little different for Ohio State?
Yeah, it's just, I don't like, how good will the garbage time be? So if garbage time is Julian saying, great. Garbage time offensive line, I'm not sure about. Garbage time receivers, Mylan Graham, good. Jelani Thurman, good.
I think if it's like Julian saying, Mylan Graham, Jelani Thurman, Bryson Rogers, James Peoples, an offensive line that I actually think the depth got somewhat significantly better this camp, and Ryan Day said that a few times. Like, I think they will not merely go through the paces when they're in garbage time. I think you might see them trying to score.
Which would be, again, of all the things to complain, like this has been a talking point for years. Play the backups and let them actually play. So, do you think it worked? Do you think he hurt us?
I don't know if he hurt us as much as he looked at the schedule now and saw that, we're going to play 17 games. I guess we should have these guys ready. So I think maybe you can add whatever numbers in your head, maybe add like another point to it, point or two to it, because of what they might do in garbage time.
Okay. You had some defensive stuff that you wanted to talk about. So talk about it here. How many points per game will Ohio State allow in the 12-game regular season? Last year, they gave up 11.2 points per game, which I think was second in the nation. Michigan led the nation, giving up 10.4. I set this at 10, which would be remarkable. To give up fewer than 10 points a game in a 12-game regular season would be pretty ridiculous, Bill, but you think it's possible, don't you?
I think it's possible. I will. You and I were talking about this earlier this week, and we're trying to come up with some stuff. I think the 2011 Alabama defense is probably the benchmark for modern defenses in terms of like smothering teams and not allowing them to do anything. That is the last college football defense to allow fewer than 10 points per game. So 2011 was a long time. I believe, if I have this correctly, I was reading this on 11 Warriors, so that's where I'm getting the information from. I didn't go bother to look it up myself. the last Ohio State defense to allow fewer than 11 points per game was in 1998. So fewer than 10 is pretty freaking good. That's like you're talking about one of the all-time defenses, I think, when you get to that point. So I think very highly of this defense. I don't know if I think quite that highly of it, like when you're talking about like greatest modern defense kind of stuff. But I think they're going to be better than last year. I think they're going to be like between 10 and 11 points per game allowed.
Okay.
So some of the stuff I was talking to you about was like total touchdowns allowed. They only gave up 15 touchdowns all of last year, which is tied for the fewest allowed in one season since that 2011 Alabama defense, which only allowed 12 that entire year. Two other defenses, 2018 Mississippi State and 2011 LSU, allowed 15 along with Ohio State this past season. So they were already really good. Like it's kind of hard to ask them to be better than they were last year, kind of given the historical context. So I don't think they're going to go under 10, but I think they will be better slightly than they were last year. So
just
I'll say
like from a math conversation, if Oregon scores 28 or 31, it makes this difficult. You've got to drop a couple shutouts in here. If they give up a couple garbage time touchdowns with 4 minutes left, it makes under 10 really difficult. The Texans are kind of in on it, though. 58% under 10 points per game, 42% over. I will go slightly over in a way that like is not indicative of how good they are. That it's just a ridiculous number, even though I do think they're going to sit on people in the second half. And if they sit on people in the second half, I don't know, man. Maybe I do. Maybe I like it.
Well, the other part of it too, the other thing that I'm like an over under that I floated to that we're not going to do here, but I think we can talk about it because it's important to this conversation. They might give up like 2 touchdowns in their first 5 games.
Yeah.
Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, Michigan State with a totally retooled offense, and then Iowa. So like they're going to play half their regular season schedule, and I would be surprised if they allow a touchdown per game in those 5 games.
Yeah. I think that's right. Oh man, I'm right on it now. Yeah, I'll just be more like 10.6, but it's something this would be a fun thing to watch. And defenses love shutouts, right? So they're gonna care at the end. If the second and third teams in against Marshall, that Jim Knowles wants a 0. So this is something to pursue. Anything else in the over/under range that you want to chat about? You had some punt stuff, and I didn't know how to put it into a question. Over/under 3 punts of 80 yards or more. I wasn't sure how to ask the texters that. They would have known. They would be like, "Oh, that's a Landis stat." But like, do you want to drop that here? Or what are you outrageously predicting? Did you already outrageously predict that Nick McLarty will have a 100-yard punt?
I did not do that, but I was tempted to. I outrageously predicted that Nick McLarty would have 3 80-yard punts this year, and then the great Mike Bassford, who's an Ohio State sports information, who listens to the show, sent me an email with punter records because I said I wasn't able to find the longest punts in program history. So then he sent them to me, the 10 longest punts in Ohio State history, and only 2 have been longer than 80 yards. Gary Lago in 1972 and Carl Edwards in 1983. Cameron Johnson's career long was 73 yards against Wisconsin in 2014. Jesse Mirko had a 72-yarder last year against Penn State. So 80-yard punts is probably not going to happen. I guess I'll say here was part of it. An Ohio State punter has never had multiple 70-plus yard punts in the same season. So I guess it's less of an over-under and more of a yes or no. Do you think Nick McLarty, the Iron Leg from Australia, will be able to rip off more than 2 70-yard punts this year?
Like especially when it comes to 80-yard punts, the hardest part of that equation is how many Ohio State offensive drives will stall inside their own 20. Yeah,
right. Not many.
Like an opponent's going to punt Ohio State down to the 3, and you're going to be like, "Oh, I don't think it's stopped." I want to see if Nick McLarty can have a 95-yard punt.
Yeah, Randall Cunningham did it. Why can't Nick McLarty do it?
Maybe Ryan Day wants to see it too. It's like Ohio State 3rd and 6 at their own 8 is taking a knee. Why?
we want to flip the field.
We don't want Nick to punt at the end zone, so we'll just stay at the 8. Because he has 90-yard range. All right. I'll go under crazy punt stats because I know he's 6'5" and 280 pounds of pure muscle. He's also a freshman. So let's ease into the 80-yard punts, maybe.
I think Nick McClarty might have the longest punt and the shortest punt in Ohio State history this year, based on some of the stuff we saw in practice. Although he had taken control of that job, and he will be the starter against Akron. I had 2 other over-unders I want to throw at you.
Okay.
And again, this is probably more of just like a yes or no than it is an over-under, but I set the over-under at 0.5, which is like, do you think he'll have one or not? Offensive touchdowns for Caleb Downs.
Over.
Okay. Would you go?
I think that's an over, even like if he doesn't play offense. That's a wrinkle. Let's get on Sports Center. Put in the defensive player to run a jet sweep from the 4, even if he's not like playing offense. And I still think maybe he will play offense.
Yeah, I'd go over 2 because I think they're going to try to get him at least 1 touchdown either way. And then the other one was Jim Knowles has talked a lot about wanting to get more takeaways this year. They only had 11. They had 11 last year. They were 124th in the country in takeaways. It's like they were like top 5 in everything, and then they were 124th in the country in takeaways. The high watermark of the Ryan Day era is 25 and 19. I have it at 17 and a half takeaways this year. And like part of it's luck. It's hard to project, but like, do you think this defense will generate a little more havoc is probably the best way to describe it. And so I have the number of 17 and a half takeaways, which they have been over. They were over in 22. They were over in 21. They were over in 20. They were over in 19. So this would still just be, if it's at 18, it would tie for the second fewest of the Ryan Day era.
I'd go over that because I think it's the next step, right? Last year was such a focus on don't give up big plays that last year wasn't about havoc. It was don't allow the offense to havoc us. So play it safe. And now if they feel like they can do that and get after it more, I think that's a natural progression. I think, it's like year 1, too aggressive, burnt. Year 2, like back off. Okay, better. Like I just think a lot of we understand. And now year 3, find a right balance that allows you to play more aggressive defensively without being worried that one missed tackle is going to lead to a 75-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm over as well. I don't think they'll be like at the 25 that they were in 2019 because I think I didn't look it up, but I'd imagine a nice chunk of that was Chase Young just knocking the ball out of the quarterback's hands. So maybe they don't get a ton of that, but I think they will have. I think they'll have more interceptions. I believe in the secondary to generate some more interceptions. Yeah. So I think I'm over on that too.
Okay. All right. Those are our over-unders. That means we have to make our official Ohio State predictions for the season, and we'll try to throw out a couple texter predictions for the season too. We're going to say where we think Ohio State's record is going to be and what they're going to do in the playoff. It's what you've been waiting for. We'll do it next on Kings of Columbus. All right, Doug Lesmerises and Billy Landis here for the big reveal. What we actually think is going to happen in this Ohio State season. Bill, what will Ohio State's regular season record be?
I have them at 11-1 with a loss at Oregon.
That is also what I have. 11-1 with a loss at Oregon. What will Ohio State's regular season record be? Texters, 59%, 12-0. Going undefeated is really difficult. 59%, 12-0. 40%, 11-1. 1%, 10-2. And then I did say 9-3 or worse. This is for 9-3, Doug. 0 votes.
Good.
So nobody there. 9-3 Doug does not subscribe to the text. So 12-0 for the texters, 11-1 for both of us. Will Ohio State win the Big Ten title? Yes or no for you?
It's a yes for me. And you'll see this on the KOTN show we're going to do. I painted myself into a tiebreaker corner with my Big Ten predictions that ended up with Ohio State playing Michigan in the Big Ten title game.
That got real. Okay. I love now the tiebreakers are out, by the way. And we just so people like the tiebreakers, the most interesting thing to me, because a lot of the other tiebreakers is just like it makes sense. The one that's the most interesting to me, and it's because they're in a round robin and Penn State doesn't play round robin with everybody, so it's not the same. But if Oregon, Michigan, and Ohio State all beat each other and finish 8-1, what really matters is you get down to the 4th tiebreaker, and then it is basically conference strength of schedule. It is the overall winning percentage of the teams in the conference you actually played. And when you get down to that, Ohio State's strength of schedule in the conference is much higher if the season goes as expected, because they play Penn State, beyond Oregon and Michigan. They also play Penn State and Iowa and Nebraska. They might play the 5 other best teams in the league.
Right.
And Michigan and Oregon don't. Oregon especially has an easier schedule, which is the corner you got painted into is Oregon's easy Big Ten schedule.
It is, yeah, because I had Michigan as a 2-loss team because I had Michigan losing to Texas, but that doesn't matter. Right. That is, yeah. So that was, I had 8-1 teams trying to figure the tiebreaker, and I got down to the 4th tiebreaker, and Michigan's Big Ten slate was more difficult than Oregon's.
Yeah. Okay, so we each have that. I am sticking with my thing that I said when we did our KOTN poll, which is Ohio State over Penn State in the Big Ten title game. So, it's yeah. This is an interesting one from Bill. Bill said this. Prediction: Ohio State goes undefeated before losing the Big Ten title game. I think we are ignoring how hard it will be emotionally to beat Michigan and then turn around and prep for another top 5 team. So that idea, like in your world, they're prepping for Michigan again, and then there's going to be motivation of, is the team that won the first matchup, now the other team's mad, they actually have an edge. But even beyond that, if Ohio State's in a Big Ten title game against Penn State or Oregon, Penn State and Oregon will not have played a team as difficult as Michigan the week before. So I at least thought it was a good point by Bill. And I'm curious, this is like the kind of thing that like Urban Meyer would always bring up, right? And now the reality of it is, this is what Ohio State's done every time it's made the Big Ten title game. But in the past, when they got there, they were facing most of the time, fair to say, a lesser West team. It wasn't a top 5 team. So now you're going to be there against one of the best 2 teams in the league, having just played Michigan. That is a new reality that's worth considering.
It definitely is. It's a point well made. And you could even say, if you look at some of those Wisconsin teams, I think maybe 1 or 2 of them that they beat were top 10 teams. It's more about roster. It's more about roster composition. Like a Michigan, Penn State, or Oregon is bringing a much better roster to Indianapolis than any team Ohio State will have played previously. So it is a point worth keeping in mind for sure. Because I can't remember. Obviously, Michigan and Ohio State play each other to end the year. I think Penn State might end with Maryland in their last regular season game, and I can't recall who Oregon plays.
I think they play Washington, right?
Washington. So that's a game. That's a game, right?
But it's not Michigan. It's not Michigan. It's not that Michigan defense.
No, but like in their own little in their own, it's less about respecting Washington and more about respecting that rivalry. Like there's an emotional component that you come down from that I think it's not. I'm not saying Ohio State, Michigan, or Washington, Oregon's the same as Ohio State, Michigan, because it's not. But in that corner of the country, people care about it quite a bit, and the players care about it quite a bit. So they'll have to adjust likewise, I think, if it ends up that way. And
Dan Lanning's never beaten Washington.
Dan Lanning has never beaten Washington.
That was the only 2 losses.
Probably what people are screaming at their radio and or YouTube screen as I pick Oregon to beat Ohio State. And like, you're not wrong. It's mostly that I just think going undefeated is hard. and if I have to pick a loss, I feel more comfortable picking that than I do picking Ohio State to lose at Penn State. And I just think Ohio State's going to beat Michigan this year.
Yeah, it's hard to go undefeated. That's all that is. It's hard to go undefeated, and we're in a world of teams can lose now, and it's okay. So 96% Ohio State wins the Big Ten, according to the texters. And you and I are both there with Ohio State as the Big Ten champs.
Yep.
How will Ohio State finish in the college football playoff? What percent of our tech subscribers do you think picked Ohio State to win the national title?
68.
80.
Oh, okay. I love
80% win the national title, 13% lose in the national title game, 7% lose in the semis, 1% lose in the quarterfinal. Nobody said lose in the first round, and nobody said miss the playoff. So what is our official prediction? Bill Landis, how far will Ohio State make it in the college football playoff?
All the way. I have Ohio State winning the national championship.
Homer. I also have Ohio State winning the national championship. This is a companion question before we get into how they get there. Which opponent or potential opponent has the best chance to keep Ohio State from winning the national title? Who would you vote for? And I just gave the obvious ones, and I'll run through them. But who would you say in this?
I said Oregon because of the chance of having to play them multiple times, and like having to play at Oregon, then a very real chance of playing them again in Indianapolis, and then perhaps even again like for a national title or in a semifinal game. So I think it's Oregon. I did consider the team that I have Ohio State beating in the national championship, which is Alabama.
Look at you. I said themselves, because isn't it really the opponent was yourself?
Wow.
No, I didn't say that.
What a terrible answer.
I think I would probably say Oregon too, just because, like, again, Ohio State typically like get them indoors or get them in great weather that part of the season, and I just like their chances, and I think like they compete there like every time, other than 2020. Right? COVID year against Saban's best team. But you got to Clemson, you got to Georgia. They just compete with anybody in their way on that stage. Is that not a fair analysis of it?
It is. And I think we've discussed this before. The dynamics are different. You don't have a month to prepare for those games anymore.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
So,
that's true.
So I like Ryan Day with the month to prepare for anybody. Like I'll probably take Ryan Day. It's just different. It's not to say that Ryan Day can't do it now. You still have a longer build up to those games than you would typically, but it's not 30 days or whatever it was they had between. I think there wasn't quite 30 days between the Big Ten title game and when they waxed Clemson in New Orleans, but they had like 3 weeks to get ready for that, and they had I think 4 weeks to get ready for Georgia in the Peach Bowl.
I do think the Oregon part of this is really interesting. I've been talking about playing Oregon 3 times all year, and I'll tell you that that's not what I have, and I'll tell you what I have in a second. The opponent most likely to stand in Ohio State's way, 46% Georgia, 42% Oregon. So that's 88% of the vote for those two teams. 5% Texas, 3% Michigan, 2% Alabama, 1% Penn State, 2% other. So I'll give you my path. So I give you my path. And again, we're doing a playoff show on KOTN, but you guys are our folks. I have Ohio State as the 1 seed playing the winner of the 8-9 game between 8 seed Oklahoma and 9 seed Penn State. I have Oklahoma winning that game, so I have Ohio State beating Oklahoma. Then I have Ohio State beating 5 seed Notre Dame. Then I have Ohio State facing 6 seed Georgia in the national title game.
Okay.
And Ohio State winning. So Ohio State's path is Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Georgia. And I had it wrong. I thought that I maybe had him playing Penn State 3 times because I have him playing Penn State in the regular season and the Big Ten title game. And this is an opportunity to play Penn State a 3rd time, but I don't have Penn State winning that first round game. What's your path?
Okay. My path is I have Ohio State as the 2 seed.
Okay.
Beating number 7 Georgia in, I guess that would be the Rose Bowl in the quarterfinals. And then in the semifinal, I have the Ohio State Oregon rematch.
Okay.
I have Ohio State winning that game as a 2 seed versus 6 seed. And then I have Ohio State beating Alabama in the national title game.
What seed do you have Alabama?
5.
Okay. So that's where we are. I don't know if that makes you feel better, if that makes you feel worse. We've been wrong in the past. We've been right in the past. But I will tell you that we both had Ohio State losing to Georgia 42-41 in the greatest double noser pick. Not great for Ohio State fans. But generally speaking, in the history of college football, 2 men who at that moment were not hosting a show together, but had in the past hosted a show and in the future would host a show, correctly predicting a 1-point game in a college football semifinal that's had 83 combined points scored is the most remarkable thing that's ever happened in college football. Let's get to a couple predictions. Jeff said Travion Henderson has more yards and a higher yards per carry, but Quinshon Judkins has more touchdowns. What do you think of I didn't do any touchdown stuff, but Quinshon leading Ohio State in touchdowns is rushing touchdowns. That's one of the best bets you can make, probably, right?
Yeah, I think we did bowl predictions or outrageous predictions on KOTN, and I think I had 30 rushing touchdowns for Quinshon Judkins because I just think I think most Ohio State scoring drives might end with a Quinshon Judkins 2-yard touchdown run.
Yeah.
It's either going to be a 2-yard Quinshon run or a 40-yard Jeremiah Smith bomb to cap most Ohio State drives. So the thing I feel strongest about is if anything is rushing wise is Quinshon leading the team in rushing touchdowns.
Okay. From the 419, Ohio State blocked 6 punts.
Woo.
Now that there's an emphasis on special teams. What do you think? You like that?
Oh, I like the thought. I like a special teams prediction based off Ryan Day being more hands on there. That's actually really smart. 6 is a lot. 6 is a lot. 6 is a lot of block punts. I don't think I'd say 6, but I would say more than they had last year, which might have been none. I can't remember. So like 2 or 3 maybe.
Yeah,
I'm gonna board with
2 or 3. This is a Heisman prediction from Paul. Ohio State will have 2 Heisman finalists in New York, 1 on offense and 1 on defense. Will and Caleb? Quinshon and Caleb? You think it's possible?
I don't think that Caleb will be a finalist. I could see Caleb Downs getting votes as maybe the face of the best defense in college football, but I don't think he'll be a finalist.
I just think Ohio State's going to be really good this year. I think they might present the same Heisman conundrum that Georgia has presented since Georgia got good, which is there's so many good players and a lot of them are on defense and the quarterback is not Caleb Williams and you don't know what to do. And the result is that kind of nothing happens. And I think which is almost like a compliment to the team. But now we have our guy, Nick. Nick, love this. Ohio State National Championship, Will Howard Heisman winner parlay, 37-1. He sent me the ticket, $30, win $1,140. So I am officially rooting for that just for Nick. Right?
Yeah. That's we've talked about Will Howard. I don't think Will Howard's going to win the Heisman Trophy, but he's Ohio State's starting quarterback. He can definitely win the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
That's pretty good value for I think the team that routinely puts quarterbacks in New York and has the second best odds to win a national title. Win a national title and a Heisman. Yeah, it's pretty good. I like that play.
This has been my prediction. Ohio State will go 16-0, win it all, beating 3 SEC teams in the process, causing Paul Feinbaum to cram it for good. So when your prediction is Paul Feinbaum crams it for good, you get on the show.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. This is another fan fiction path. I love fan fiction. Michael. Undefeated regular season, lose in the Big Ten title rematch with Oregon. Number 5, home playoff round 1 win versus number 12, 9-3 Michigan. Now that's a little fictional because you're getting a group of 5 team to be the 11th seed ahead of Michigan, the defending national champ. But it's fan fiction. It's okay. Sure. Quarterfinal win versus Oregon, semifinal win versus Georgia, championship game win versus number 1, 15-0 Texas. 16-1 national champs, 2-0 at home versus Michigan, 2-1 versus Big Ten champ Oregon. You're talking about a playoff path. It's Michigan, Oregon, Georgia, Texas. It's do people like the playoff? It's those are the 4 greatest games in Ohio State history practically lined up in a row.
Do you think there's anybody not rooting for, but has already kind of resigned themselves to being okay with the idea of losing the Big Ten title game if it means hosting a home playoff game?
I don't know. There's a lot of discussion about is being the 5 seed better than being the 1 seed, because under the idea that if you're the 5 seed, you're probably going to play the group of 12, the group of 5 team is the 12 seed. And then you would play the 4 seed who is the worst champ. So you're going to get the ACC champ probably who might be not as good as the 3rd best team in the SEC or the Big Ten. And that path versus if you're the 1 seed, the 8-9 winner is going to be like a team, like an awesome Big Ten team or an awesome SEC team, probably. So I think you could root for the home playoff game, in this historic season. I think that's part of it. I'm not sure where I am on the path. I understand the discussion. I haven't formed a strong final opinion on it. It's going to depend on who the teams actually are.
Right.
But I could see people rooting for a 5.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have the time off. But the path is enticing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, it's cool. It'd be cool to host a home playoff game.
Yeah. This is Thomas. Ohio State is going to cruise through the regular season except for Oregon, who they might play twice or even 3 times, and Georgia. No other team is on their level of terms of talent, but those two come close. So like the idea, and that again reflects what people voted for, which is 88%. I think of the people said it's either Oregon or Georgia, most standing in Ohio State's way. This is a vote the other way, though. Jordan said Michigan. My reasoning why Michigan is the biggest threat to a national title is we have gone 3 straight years without winning. The mental challenge of that game is more difficult than overcoming any sort of physical or talent challenge this year. That's interesting. And I'm not sure I disagree with that. That like just like getting over the hump against Michigan might be harder than beating Georgia. I get that. I think it can be reasonable.
I think it could be. I think that is a reasonable take. I wonder if the Connor Stallion stuff might help you get over that hurdle easier. If you can just talk yourself into like the only reason we lost is because they cheated, whether you think that's true or not.
Right.
Like on the outside, I think that can help you get over that mental hurdle. Rather easily.
All right. This is JD from the 502 prediction. Ohio State is top 3 in the country in rushing yards per game, in interceptions per game, and leads the country in points allowed per game, under 9.5. So this is leaning on like I like picks, running the ball, not giving up points. That actually is the formula for Ohio State winning the national championship this year too, right?
Yeah, that's like the best defense ever too, maybe.
Yeah.
Because if you I could see a world where Ohio State gets through the regular season like around 10-ish points or perhaps even under 10-ish points.
Yeah.
But then if you go through 3 more playoff games while maintaining that scoring average, then you are probably the best defense we've seen.
All right. Bill Landis predicts the best defense ever. All right. That's it for this version of Kings of Columbus. Know what you hear because we're doing what you on Kings of the North this week. This is the plan going forward. Kings of the North live Monday through Thursday, 12 to 1:30. And then Kings of Columbus not live, recorded and dropping every Wednesday afternoon. Is that a fair way to describe this, Chief of Content Officer Bill Landis?
That's right. Yeah, that is the plan. Yeah.
And for people who love Tishu, and I think most people listening and watching to this do love Tishu, he will be joining me for a non-live but recorded Friday morning gambling show where we are betting. We have a $5,000 bankroll of actual money that we will be betting and then giving at the minimum $5,000 to charity. But if we come out ahead, we're giving the winnings to charity. And we're going to have like 2 bets we make each week. And if you were ever part of the Buckeye Talk show where betting the Buckeyes, where Tishu and I had like a bet of the week and we just rode first quarter overs, he rode. He drove, I rode. I'm on the, he's driving the motorcycle and I'm the guy, I'm hugging him. I'm hugging him from the back. We rode Ohio State first quarter overs. Tishu's scouting them out. So we want to win money for charity. So this is not muck around time. This is win money time. So find us on Bets of the North Friday morning on the KOTN channel.
Is that 13.5 looking juicy this week?
We found it at 10.5.
You got a 10.5?
We found it at 10.5. It's out there.
Where's my phone?
I know.
I saw it at 13.5.
No, I know. Like that Tishu's out of 10. Like I'm telling you, I might just should bet it now and be like, this is what we wanted, right? Yeah. So I have a lot of money in an online betting account now it's not my money. It's a charity's money. It is really making me nervous. I might have to throw my phone out the window. I'll like bury my phone in the backyard and have my wife make the bet every week because it's just sitting there. But we want to make it real. All right. You guys make this happen. We love you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being tech subscribers. Thanks for being viewers on YouTube. Thanks for being listeners on podcast. You make us who we are, and you make all of this possible. So for our great producer, Mike Yarostowski, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of Columbus.